Next up, we have LifeBrand. So Thomas, please unmute your mic and turn on your camera. Thomas Colaiezzi is the founder and CEO of LifeBrand. He is a longtime fitness industry executive that was looking for a technology that could solve a serious problem he had while interviewing and hiring employees. Thomas, take it from here.
Thank you very much. Before I get started, Kevin, I have a little secret for you. This is a licensing juggernaut, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I know how much you like that. Everybody, my name is TJ. I am the CEO and founder at LifeBrand. We developed AI technology that can go back and scrub your social media from inception to find potentially offensive, inappropriate, or just immature posts from your past so that you can remove them, protect yourself and your personal brand, but equally as important, protect the brand of the company that you work for. It has caused an epidemic, social media, of old posts coming back and blowing up in the faces of individuals and companies that they work for. You've probably all seen examples in professional sports because of how popular they are, but it happens in companies every day. I'm sure it's happened in companies that Mr. Wonderful's has and everyone else out there. We've developed a way to properly do a social media background check for companies. Most companies, 70 to 90% of companies, according to the Society for Human Resources Management and Career Builder, do some type of social media snooping during the hiring process. Somebody is looking through your social media to see if they can get a feel for who you are. The problem is that's not Fair Credit Reporting compliant. It's not EEOC compliant. You as an individual looking for a job have a right to know what information is being used to assess your ability to get that job. What people are doing with social media background checks right now is the equivalent of if they wanted to do a criminal background check, just calling their buddy that's a cop and saying, hey, Joe, can you run a background check on this guy that I'm thinking about hiring? You can't do that. If somebody wants to run a criminal background check, they send you a link, you consent to it. You have the right ahead of time to review it on your own to make sure the information's accurate and correct. And that's what we did. We brought social media snooping above table. We can probably go a couple slides ahead. I probably forgot to say next slide. You can go one more and one more. Great. Our big thing is right straight B2B for employers. We have 4 patents pending, and we're the only Fair Credit Reporting compliant and EEOC compliant way to do a social media background check. Employers can now be assured that their employees' past social media behavior will not negatively affect the company, but they can also make sure they're hiring the right way. Social media tells you who's looking at your social media nowadays. You can see who's looking at your Facebook or LinkedIn. Imagine if you applied for a job and you saw that HR manager just looked at your LinkedIn or just looked at your Instagram, and then maybe you didn't get the job. Maybe it was Mr. Wonderful here, and maybe Mr. Wonderful just wasn't the right person for the job, but he feels like he was discriminated against. He feels like maybe he didn't get the job because of the color of his skin or his sexual orientation or his religion. And there was be no way for the company to prove in court that human bias, even if unintentional, didn't creep into that situation. That's what's happening across the country right now, and that's why employers need to use our technology. Next slide, please. How it works, real simple. A company would create an account. They would then send a link to a potential new hire. That new hire connects their desired social media accounts. Right now, we do Facebook and Twitter. In the very near future, we'll be doing LinkedIn and Instagram. Our technology then goes to work. We find any potentially harmful posts. Maybe Mr. Wonderful had 48 potentially harmful posts. He then has the ability to go through, delete, or ignore the ones he wants. So now 2 things are happening. The company's making sure he's deleting inappropriate things from his past, but they're also getting a sense for who he is. We have a social impact score that ranks behavior through social media that can easily be translated to potential workplace behavior. He would then send that report back to the employer, but the employer doesn't see the actual posts. They just see how many potentially harmful posts he had, how many he deleted. They'll see what buckets they fell into. Maybe it was language, maybe it was a racial insult, maybe it was threatening, but they don't see the actual posts. So the fact that we're giving that person a heads up that we're running and getting their approval to do it, the fact that no potential information is going back to the employer makes this a fair credit compliant way to do a background check. Next slide, please, since I'm running out of time here. Our competition almost entirely exists in the B2C space. In fact, one of our competitors was actually on a very popular show that Mr. Wonderful is familiar with years ago. Nobody has taken the time to tackle the logistics and the compliance of going into the B2B space. We have a great legal team here in Philadelphia that has worked with us on compliance, making sure basic states and different cities that allow and don't allow social media screening. Part of the money we recently raised is going into geofencing our technology to make sure human resource professionals don't accidentally do it somewhere they shouldn't. We're right now the only one with a FCRA compliant way that's not just screening what's publicly available out there, going straight to the consumer. Next slide, please. B2B revenue model is really simple. This is what Mr. Wonderful is going to love. We go straight to companies, but we also have unbelievable opportunity for revenue sharing, licensing, and white labels. We don't need to just go get one B2B client. We are currently talking to some of the biggest background check companies in the country, some of the biggest HR providers in the country, one of the 3 top credit bureaus in the country to license our technology, to revenue share our technology. We don't need to just go and get one company at a time. We're going and getting one huge company that then brings us 7,000, 40,000 companies. Next slide, please.
Last slide.
B2C rev, go one more slide, then we won't do this one last. This is our timeline coming for next year. We just went to market 2 months ago. In our first month, we did over $80,000 in revenue, 78,000 of that monthly recurring. We will hit $3 million in revenue by the end of Q1 this coming year. We'll have 2,000 B2B clients by June of 2021, and that's not including our big licensing and white label deals. And I'll be happy to answer any questions since I think I'm running out of time right now.
Okay, when is LinkedIn and Instagram going to be operational? How can you possibly do a job posting app or application or AI that doesn't have LinkedIn? That's where people go to get jobs.
Very good point. When we first started this, Kevin, we obviously had a limited budget. We felt that people on LinkedIn should be smart enough not to post horribly offensive jokes. It's on Twitter and Facebook that most of the problems exist. We are now adding Instagram and LinkedIn so that we can cross-reference job history, stuff like that. But most people don't post things in their past on LinkedIn that's offensive. It's Facebook, it's Twitter.
But when will they? If I'm the HR department of a large company, I want to know I've got all my bases covered.
We're looking at about 60 days. We've already worked on the back-end API integrations with that. We're just waiting on the approval processes to make sure everything is up to their current APIs right now.
Okay, I'm going to assume the low-hanging fruit on this is B2B to HR departments in large S&P companies. Is that where I want to go first?
There and professional sports leagues, obviously their players are more in the main spotlight. As of yesterday, we've now talked to either individual teams or players associations in 3 of the 4 professional sports and talent management. Obviously, if you're managing high-profile people, their mess-ups on social media are going to be much more of a PR nightmare than Bob at some small local accounting firm.
Okay, let's say I own an NBA team. What's it going to cost me on an annual basis to use this technology?
We're strictly on a PM pricing model per member per month. For an NBA team, you're going to be looking at about $80,000 a month. And that would include not just your players, your entire organization. So everything. But one PR nightmare is going to be way more than $80,000. It's almost, can you afford not to use us versus can you afford to use us?
Now, I'm going to make the assumption you're not using people to groom or curate this content. You're using AI. Is that correct?
We are using AI. We started with a huge database, and essentially what's continuing to train the machine learning is when it pulls up and gives you the choice to delete or ignore. When you delete it, you're essentially confirming to the machine learning that this was bad. When you hit ignore, it's starting to learn, okay, maybe it was a bad word, but in a decent, used in the proper context. And then, as you know, it's going to take thousands and thousands of uses to really hone that in. But as it gets more accurate, right now we're hypersensitive. We will flag everything to give you the opportunity to determine if it's offensive or not. And over time, it'll kind of reel it in a little bit based on the training of the AI.
But in this FDRA compliant model, you're allowing the individual to curate which content eventually stays and which goes, because they're applying for a job or they're trying to maintain their position in the company. They curate it, they decide, right?
They decide what they delete or remove. The information that then goes back to the employer. Let's say we just did it with you and you had 48 potentially harmful posts. They would then see that you had 48, how many you deleted, and then it'll break down into buckets what they were. So maybe if they were all language, the company says, okay, I'm okay with hiring a potty mouth. But if they were racially insensitive or sexually explicit, that might give them pause on hiring somebody.
But would you give me as the employer, even though I don't see the actual content, would you be able to say, in 99% of the cases, this many issues that were deleted in this bucket ended up being a very bad outcome as an employee? Like, how can I use the aggregate content to help me make better decisions, even though I don't get to see the post? You know where I'm going, right?
Very good question. Yeah. I mean, for example, on average, the average person does have 33 potentially offensive posts. So that's information that those HR people need to know, because they might scan it and see 35 and think that's bad. It'll also tell you based on the posts. Now, look, that individual person may have never been in trouble before. So we can't say his posts got him in trouble. What we can say is these are the types of posts in these buckets that typically come up and become PR nightmares for companies. These are the ones you need to avoid, but we're not going to sit there and tell companies who to hire or not hire, similar to a criminal background check. It's our job to provide them with the basic data, and then the company decides what they want to look, overlook, and move on for.
Final question, Kevin.
Pricing. Do you have any customers now that have embraced the pricing model and are on a subscription basis right now?
We do, yes. Like I said, our first month, we did just over $80,000 in revenue, and almost 70,000 of that was monthly recurring. And that was based on only 40 some clients. So our average client right now, their average monthly subscription cost is a little over $1,700 a month. That will come down greatly. We purposely targeted really big companies at the beginning so that we could use their names. I can't use it here, but I can, other places. We've targeted some of the biggest banks, some of the biggest financial institutions in the United States.
Has any of them fallen off the platform saying, I can't use this, doesn't help me at all? Have you had attrition?
We just went to market 2 months ago. I mean, no one has yet. They obviously will, and we'll eventually figure out what that lifetime, average value is and how long they stay. I mean, nobody's canceled in the first month, so I guess that's a good sign, but we have a while to go, obviously, before, I can give you real data on that.
Got it. Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
LifeBrand. Wow. I mean, it's, that's really interesting. And I love the HR licensing model. He is absolutely right. Thomas is right about that. Customer acquisition is the issue. How much do you have to give away for free to try it, to prove the benefit are some of the questions I've had. It's very, very early. But is it a solution to a huge problem? Yes. I have that in all of my companies. Every day, I'm doing a constant search of what's blowing up on social. And when it's blowing up on social, it's never good news.
Yeah.
It's very rarely great news. It's some problem with a post, some issue. And sometimes it's reoccurring with certain of my entrepreneurs, because they go back when people are after you and trying to smash you around on social, they dig through all of your platforms to find things they can repost. I find that really intriguing. That is, make the $10,000, prize go to LifeBrand. I think he's going to build a big business because of the
Amazing.
And maybe the crowd doesn't agree, but that is a strong entrepreneur with every question answered. I love to grill entrepreneurs. He nailed it, everyone. I totally see the opportunity for what this could be and how important it is and how I'd want to use it in my businesses. But I congratulate all the entrepreneurs on doing a fantastic job. Each one had great attributes, but
LifeBrand's the choice. Let's quickly, Thomas, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and show your video? Congratulations.
Yeah, hi, thank you. And Kevin, I got to tell you, it's an extremely humbling and incredible experience to hear you say that. So thank you very much. And everyone did a phenomenal job today. I would have a very hard time picking between these 5 companies. So kudos to everybody that presented today. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty awesome. I'm kind of blown away right now. So.
Your presentation had the 3 attributes that I think that everybody should learn from. Number 1, can you explain to me in 90 seconds exactly what you do and why I would care? You nailed that. Number 2, why are you the right person to execute on this business plan, and why would your team be able to do it? And how can you accelerate and beat your competitors? You nailed that. And what I loved about your presentation, which I tell everybody that pitches me, know your numbers. Know your numbers. And you knew your numbers. And so, it was flawless. I don't want to boost your ego. You don't need it. It was a flawless presentation. I congratulate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wonderful, and everybody else. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Okay.